Good evening, everybody. Let's talk Assassin's Creed on a more podcast for all things Assassin's Creed.
Do you want to do that one again, mate, or shall we just crack on?
Shh, we're gonna pretend it never happened.
See, I could have allowed a pause there in the recording so you could put a really nice edit point in. But I'm a monster and I've just carried on talking, so I'm going to make your edit really hard. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 146 of Let's Talk Assassin's Creed. First of all, let's welcome our guest who has already started giggling in the background there. Andrew from Visions of the Past. Welcome back, mate.
Hey, mate. What's going on?
Right. What are we doing?
What are we doing today? I didn't prep. So all I know is I get a keyword, right? Is that how this works?
I feel like, do you know what, Declan, why don't you introduce today's topic? I normally do it, but screw it, mate. You do it.
The key word is herbs.
Oh, come on. Are we going to make Andrew say the word? Sorry, Andrew. The Brits are mocking you, and we should probably apologize.
That's fine. It's nothing new. Herb.
I just love the way Americans drop the H on the word herb. It cracks me up. Anyway, that's way off topic. I'll tell you what we're talking about. So, oh dear, here we go. First of all, I'm going to apologize for my voice being a bit croaky. I've had man flu, and I'm getting over it, but my voice is still a bit croaky. So I apologize for that first. Now, a couple of weeks ago, in a moment of stupidity and silliness, I decided to do what I thought was clearly a humorous I still can't believe it. Anyway, I thought it was clearly a humorous analysis and breakdown of all of the main Assassin's Creed games and whether they were Assassin-y or Creedy, and giving them a score out of 5 for both. And I guess my humour's not very funny, but some people took it as a joke, and some people were really not very happy. I thought it was obvious when I gave Brotherhood 6 out of 5, for its Creedy score. But and there was many other little comments hidden in there. But yes, anyway, that sparked a bit of a discussion with me and Declan and with Andrew and others about really what is an Assassin's Creed game? What does it need to have? What gameplay elements does it need? What visual elements? What style? So yeah, the I don't know what we're going to call this episode yet. Maybe we will just call it "What Makes an Assassin's Creed Game," or maybe we'll just call it "James Gets Himself into Trouble on the Internet." I don't know, but I would just like to say I don't know if he's listening or not, but I've always wondered actually if game devs is it better that they just walk away from the game when they're done and don't engage too much, or whether they do sort of follow the commentary or not. But anyway, Darby replied to my tweet saying, yeah, you have completely failed to understand Black Flag. And at that point I felt bad because I think I understand Black Flag quite well, and I was very deliberately misunderstanding it in my my scoring system, because I was trying to reflect, the usual commentary, which is, it's a good pirate game, but it's not a good Assassin's Creed game. Oh, come on. Anyway, with that in mind, Andrew, you're our guest. What makes an Assassin's Creed game?
Well, the thing about your Black Flag review is you poked the lead writer on that one, and you had to expect that.
I didn't mention him or say, hey, Darby, buddy, could you take a look at this and give me your thoughts? I was trying to fly under the radar here,
And the fact that you didn't rate it something like R-matey or something silly like that. But that whole thread from Darby, that was just genius. I loved the interaction with him in Six Keys. It was just
it
great.
Was. Yes. The those wounds will never heal. Anyway, yeah.
It just takes some ointment. We'll be all right. Really, you have to ask yourself, what does make an Assassin's Creed game? Is it just a guy running around in a robe and a hood stabbing people with a blade? For me, it's not. It's really the ideology of it. It's the core. It's the idea of tyranny and freedom, or chaos and order, as it's gotten to become. It's that dual side of the coin and how things flip. You really see that the most in the first game and in 3, to me anyway, because you're seeing all they really want, the Templars and the Assassins, they say they want peace, but they just go about it in a different way.
Yeah.
So to me, that's really where an Assassin's Creed game gets its Assassin's Creed score.
What about you, Declan?
To be honest, I would say I'm similar and as well with philosophy, but I think the big key for me as well is just the idea of questioning history. Because Warren Vidic did tell Desmond that, history is essentially written by the victors. I can't remember his quote on word. And then you play the Animus and you play the history simulation, and then you go into the real world that we live in and you read the history books. And you just start questioning history because it's just a fun thing. It's like, was there a shady organization? Because we do know the real world has like Freemasons and other conspiracy organizations, and that makes Assassin's Creed fun. That little, oh, do we know history's right? Do we know history's wrong? Can we trust the Animus? Is that telling us the right history? And to me, that's the meta that makes Assassin's Creed, and the philosophy, of course.
Do you think without those elements, then a game can be produced that isn't an Assassin's Creed game? Or do you think it's enough to set it in the same universe? So, okay, let's take a slightly different example. If there was an Assassin's Creed game with no historical tourism bit, like all modern day, would that still be an Assassin's Creed game? Would you want to play it?
I'm going to say no and yes. No, would I play it? Because, to be honest, I like modern day. I really love it, but I love history. So I play Assassin's Creed. I want to know the history. I adore modern day to a point. Like, I would binge the hell out of modern day, but I am in it for the history. But I think it's impossible to not put Assassin's Creed philosophies into modern day. It's just, how do you tie that story without going too far? Because the world is dangerous as it is, so trying to put a stamp on Assassin vs Templars in real world conflict would be too close for comfort. So I think it would. I think you could essentially tell a modern day on Assassin's Creed story. I think it's 100% possible. But I wouldn't play it. And it's going to get me a lot of trouble.
Okay. I would just imagine like Watch Dogs Legion, but with more parkour and Assassins and Templars. And I have to say, I think that would be cool. What about you, Andrew? What do you think?
So you're thinking the Assassin's Creed crossover from Legion.
I should say I've never played Legion, but I've watched a playthrough of that crossover with, is it Darcy Clarkson, the character with the modern day robes? And it looks fantastic.
Right. Yeah, and I think she's got some sort of electrical hidden blade. It's really neat. I would actually do modern day. Because I think there's enough within the lore now about modern day, about how much control that Abstergo has, and the idea of an assassin cell trying to take it down is interesting. The question that we're going to see in a few years is, what's it going to be like without the modern day and only the history? That's coming sooner than we think.
That is a really good point, and that is one of the sort of open questions, isn't it, from the AC 15 or the Ubisoft Forward.
How will Red and Hexe, how will that integrate with Infinity Hub, and how it will tell the modern day story? Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
And there'll be people at that point that say, well, if there's no modern day, then this isn't Assassin's Creed.
Yep. The one question I'm going to have specifically is, how can we tell what's true? Because that's one of the issues that I have with Odyssey. Specifically within Fate of Atlantis DLC.
Yeah.
Because, like, we have this Animus that can rebuild and show you choices within the calculations, but that might not necessarily have been what happened in the DNA strands. And it took multiple DNA plus information from a book to create the Peloponnesian War. And then within Fate of Atlantis, you have a simulation created for you by a long dead Isu, which then is relived through the Animus. So you're a simulation in a simulation created maybe not even necessarily from the truth. It's one of the reasons why I don't trust Alethea.
Mm. On that dialogue choice point, and it's not really the topic of the. Maybe it is, because dialogue choice was new with Odyssey, and some people love it, and some people really don't like it. And you do make a good point. What is correct? Because in theory, there should be no choice, because your memories are your memories.
And that's one of the issues that we see with Odyssey, why so many people say it's not Assassin's Creed.
For me, it was, again, I know I've made this point many times, it was my first game in the franchise. I'd had no preconceptions. I didn't know that there were some rules. We can come to the rules later, actually. And I just played the game and chose the choices that I felt either made sense. And I remember once I kind of got familiar with because what Odyssey does do, which, Valhalla has a few key decision points, but it doesn't have choice in every quest and every side quest and every world event. It's just few and far between, whereas Odyssey, pretty much every minute or two, you're making a dialogue choice, fight, lie, romance, reject, or whatever. And I enjoyed it, because I enjoyed sometimes deciding, well, today Cassandra's had a bad day. She's not putting up with anyone's shit. All right, she's had a good night's sleep. She's feeling chilled. She's going to be a bit more calm. And I do think there's a way that you could explain choice, and you could integrate it within the concept of genetic memory and the concept of the animus. But maybe we'll come to that in a minute. Declan, over to you, mate.
I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for this, but I want to just point the fact that people who do question Odyssey, but what is true, because of the choices, one could actually argue, sorry, that everything we think we've played, except for 3, because I've got a point with 3 in a minute, could actually be wrong. Because we are all assuming that genetic memories is 100% pure fact, that everything that the person witnessed, their beliefs, their sight, their sense, doesn't in fact afflict genetic memory, which means that if somebody had a traumatic event and they saw a shadow figure kill a friend, their belief system may say a ghost, but some people would argue the fact that the genetic memory would remember a person, not what you saw. But I strongly believe that genetic memory is what you see, what you smell, what you believe. So one could argue that any history you relive from memory, for genetic memory, could be false under the pretense that your character, your ancestor, didn't see the whole fact, so their memory built up the world and everything from memory because it's what they can remember. But is it possible to argue that their beliefs may taint what they see? So they see a Templar's activities as pure evil because that's their belief. So when you rewatch their memory shows that their beliefs are purely evil, and then it's up for us as the players to work that out. And when you look at Last Descendants, they do touch upon the fact of 5 people can be in one simulation as long as they meet, and it gives you the idea that these 5 people can tell a more accurate memory than anything Assassin's Creed's ever done because it covers all the blind spots. So I would argue that when people say that with Odyssey, you cannot believe what they say because of choices, you could argue that anything that's happened in Assassin's Creed isn't believable based on, one, player choices because it is a game, but also memory choices that your character would have made, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and it comes back to a point which I know many people have made, which is that memories are imperfect. People forget things. People misremember. You could insert fake memories into people's minds with the right conversation and the right words and the right persuasion. You know, do you really believe that 50, 60-year-old Ezio who had his children with Sophia and passed his memories down to his children, do you really believe he remembered everything he did in his teens and 20s perfectly? Probably not. You can very easily get hung up on this point of genetic memory and what is true and what isn't. I like the idea to come back to what I said about dialogue choice, and it connects to this point of what memories are true. Maybe what Odyssey did, and maybe it was, maybe they never considered it, or maybe they did and it just wouldn't work out from a gameplay point of view or a story point of view. Probably not with a game that long, but I would love to see a game where you'd have to make the animus much more visible, right? In recent games, it's been sort of minimized, hasn't it, in terms of its overlay and how often you step out of the animus and so on. And I think with what we've learned from the future of Assassin's Creed Infinity, this will never ever happen. But anyway, I can speculate. I would love the idea of putting the animus analyzes a DNA strand, and you step into the animus, or you lay down in the animus or whatever, and you start exploring the memories. But the animus presents in its overlay, okay, I have analyzed this DNA memory and I have found all of these, the DNA is disrupted, or it's broken, or there are gaps. So the animus has reconstructed parts, and therefore that reconstruction is your choice. So you're still keeping it tightly linked to how the animus analyzes DNA and analyzes the memories, but you're also explaining that, do you know what, these memories are not complete. So the animus is filling in the gaps. Then it's up to you as the player which path you choose. Now, I suppose for those that want a lore compliant or a canonical playthrough, you could have the animus make predictions. So let's say your character reaches a key decision point. The animus could say, I've analysed this memory and I think there's a 70% chance that here the character fights. There's a 10% chance they romance or whatever. If you want a canonical playthrough, you just choose the highest percentage chance. But if you want to explore the memories and look at maybe hidden memories or alternative explanations, maybe you choose the other options. But of course, it would be even better with replayability, because you'd go back and you'd maybe fully explore the memory and fully explore the options. But do you think then that if we had an all modern day game, there's no animus, there's no genetic memory, would you still consider that an Assassin's Creed game if it's still Assassins versus Templars? I think I would. I think I'm fairly relaxed about the rules and the kinds of gameplay and story elements that need to be in a game. What do you think, Andrew?
I think what you're talking about sounds more like Minerva looking at the calculations.
Oh, yes.
Because the idea that she placed her message in the vault under the 16th chapel for Ezio, just to make sure that Desmond was reliving that memory, that would be something that would, in theory, be possible through some way that you described. Another way that you can look at it is the comics will do something similar to that. Recollections, it's the one of the ones where it's the one I'm thinking of is with Juhani Berg. I did it again. Without Otso Berg.
Mr. Berg. Let's just call it Mr. Berg.
Let's just call him Mr. Berg. Mr. Berg, if you're nasty. Where he was reviewing some memories of Ezio, Edward, Altair, and Ratiga Heitan. When you first go into, when you get to the point where he's viewing the memory, the animus gives him a prompt on, it's like 93% truth. So it gives you an idea on how much it had to make up based on the memory. So the way you guys are talking is it makes sense that they're not going to remember everything. Ezio didn't wear the same robes for 40 years. One, they were his dad's, so they were old. And two, they had fallen apart based on everything that he had to do. So there's no way he would have that would have been possible. But in his mind, remembering those instances, I could see him not caring about remembering what he wore that day. Things like that. When Odyssey came out, my first playthrough was very difficult playthrough. I had a very hard time getting through it because it just wasn't clicking with me. The story wasn't clicking. And it wasn't until my New Game Plus playthrough that I liked it, because everything was straight in a line. You could see the story. It wasn't like my first playthrough. I got to the Battle of Pelos, I think. And then
That's the
naval battle in the lower left part of the map.
Yeah, Battle of Pelos, where you finally sort of have a big showdown with Deimos.
And I wasn't high enough level. So instead of the game giving me the level, I had to start doing side missions and stuff like that. And I did so many side missions and I played it for so long, I forgot what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's was a fear that I had with Valhalla. That's a fear I'm going to have with Red. And maybe I'll like Valhalla better if I get to play New Game Plus and just play through
I definitely had some of that with Odyssey, but I felt it more with Valhalla, with its structure.
There was a lot more filler in the main story too.
Yeah. And I remember just on the Valhalla point, I remember something that Jayvee commented on in his review of Valhalla, and I had seen it, but I don't think I'd properly remembered it and understood it. And there are points in Valhalla where you've rescued Sigurd and he just looks grumpy in Ravensthorpe for hours and hours and hours, because you can't interact with him until you've done a number of other side arcs. So Valhalla's a funny one. It really is a funny one.
And that can be argued that that's because of memory, if you want to take that story.
Good point. Yeah.
Because the memory within Eivor might not necessarily remember the way things happened. Like sometimes you'll sit back and you'll go, okay, what year was that? Was I 12? Was I 15? I really don't remember what order this happened in. So that would make sense that if you're pulling genetic memory out of her dead body, that when she died, her memory might not have been everything. Now, if you really want to test this theory as a game developer or a story writer within the series, give us DNA from an Alzheimer's patient and my dad went through this. So when you see him sitting in Christmas and remembering the 40s when it's 60 years later, it kind of makes you go, okay, so how would that affect life in the Animus? It's just a thought.
I think one point I was thinking as you were talking, it's safe to say that then maybe this whole debate of what makes an Assassin's Creed an Assassin's Creed game is getting bogged down with the simple debate of mechanics of a gameplay loop. That is Odyssey not an Assassin's Creed game because you have to go out and do all these side quests that you forget the story? Does that warrant gameplay loop to be, no, it's not Assassin's Creed game because it's got loot? The same with the amount of alliance arcs, and then that ties in with it's a game. It's essentially, it's not an interactive novel, it's not a movie. There has to be mechanics to push us forward to enjoy the experience. And one could also argue, and I'm going to do it with Valhalla, and it's one I've argued the most, that just because something on the surface does not seem Assassin's Creedy or slow and pointless to a story, could have a deeper AC meaning if you're willing to look at Assassin's Creed from philosophy over gameplay. So, if you remember from the start of Valhalla, when Sigurd starts, saying, I'm going to seek alliance, Eivor's pissed. She's like, you can't do that, it's cowardly. But then she does the alliances in England, and even one of the alliances with Halfdan, I think it's Halfdan in East Anglia at the very top. I can't remember. It's Yorkshire.
Yorkshire, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about how people is paranoid. He's got all this greed.
And he's got his Isu memory coming in.
Yeah, so he's basically, it's the same thing as he's got so much glory. People argue that he thinks he's paranoid, and really a lot of people are bogged down. Like, Valhalla's not an Assassin's Creed game because you're not an assassin. Plus, these alliance missions pull away from the main story. But then you realize that actually, from a philosophy point of view and ideology, it is an Assassin's Creed story in them alliance arcs, because Eivor's countering fate. If she disregarded the alliances, if she went down Dag's idea of glory, she becomes Odin. She becomes herself, her original self, to do what fate suggested and betray her brother, because it's her member in her life. But by doing the alliances, by growing herself, she defies fate and becomes Eivor. She remembers Odin, she accepts Odin, but she accepts she can be somebody better because she's got help. So it asks that question that how much does gameplay loop take away from what is essentially Assassin's Creed ideology, if this makes any sense?
I would have liked to have seen Valhalla make a lot of those, what we saw as filler arcs, as optional, making the end of the game, that Battle of Chippenham, harder. So you'd have less reinforcements, or you'd have less allies, making that part of the game harder. Now, I mean, if you end up like my Eivor, who was severely overpowered at that point, it wouldn't have mattered. But it could have changed the story, and then you double down on the fact that you go, yes, this didn't happen this way, but this is how you chose to do it, and the Animus is showing you what would have happened if Eivor not done the Hatham's missions in the cities, or went and did the Burning Man for Gunther and his wife. So things like that, I think, could have made it much better, at least from a Animus choice point of view. There were, of course, issues, but that comes from the that we saw from this idea using the DLC, where it doesn't look like Eivor made any progress as a character in Wrath of the Druids or Siege of Paris. And we don't even see Rollo, who is a major historical character during the Siege of Paris.
And we meet him in is it the Essex? We meet him in Colchester, I think.
Somewhere over
which
there,
might be part of the East Anglia arc. I could point to the town on the map.
All I remember from that arc is that he slept with some lord's wife, and yeah.
And then he doesn't reappear. But I'll just make one point on Valhalla, and this is not really the purpose of today's thing, but I still think a lot about Valhalla because I invested a lot of time in it, and I came away with such conflicted feelings about it. And what I assume, and I don't work in game development, but so I'm speculating here, but I assume that when a dev team sits down with a blank whiteboard and says, right, we're making the next game or a new game, they don't really start with a blank whiteboard. They start with probably design briefs and market research. And I would assume that one of the guiding sort of fundamental objectives is, and this would probably come from sort of very senior people at Ubisoft, would be, we need you to make a game that offers X hours of content. Yeah. Totally separate question whether that content is high quality or low quality. That's different. I'm not bothered about that. But just that, we need a game that is 50-hour main story and 50 hours of additional content, or 100 hours plus or whatever. The exact numbers don't really matter. But my assumption is that there is that kind of requirement.
Well, and then it's the response.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to. That's how
they got to be able to monetize. They're going to give you so many millions of dollars. You got to be able to provide a good ROI. You need it.
Yep, and you want to keep the players engaged, and you want to, if you're selling Ubisoft Plus, you want to show people buying Ubisoft Plus that you're going to get, I don't know, 1,000 hours of gameplay per year for your $10 a month
And
or
when
whatever it
you
is.
support a game for as long as Valhalla was, you can't say, okay, well, you need to get through this 100 hours before you can play the DLC you just bought. So I get why it happened that way. Doesn't mean I like it, but I get it.
But I tell you, the point I was thinking of was, if you've got that requirement, then I have come to respect Valhalla's approach for reaching that requirement over time. It's something I didn't really realize for a long time. And that's because, I suppose, if we look at Odyssey, which is really the only game you can compare it to, because Origins actually is pretty short.
Oh, it's much smaller.
Especially on a new game. Plus, if you just do the main story, it's very, very short. But Odyssey's got a lot of longer side quests. It roams you across the whole map. I do quite appreciate. I didn't appreciate this at the time of playing, it's only long after I finished playing Valhalla, and I was watching various interviews, and I think it was Darby who was being interviewed, and maybe it wasn't. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, one of the senior sort of leaders on the team was saying, we wanted each of these arcs to be like a self-contained adventure, like sitting down and watching a couple of hours of Vikings or Last Kingdom.
Yeah, that was Darby.
Right. Okay.
I remember that interview.
Okay, so it was Darby. So instead of that, you sit down for a couple of hours and you play your own mini adventure. And I at the time, I just didn't appreciate that structure, and it was just so much stuff and more and more and more stuff. And I get it now. You start in Ravensthorpe, you do stuff, you have some fun, you explore, you meet characters, whatever. You return to Ravensthorpe, and I suppose I just didn't see that, and I see it now. It's a really obvious structure. And Horizon Forbidden West does something similar as well with the middle act, where you set out from the base, you do stuff, you complete an objective, you return to the base. And I suppose it's just playing more games and getting more open-minded and more aware of how narratives are structured and paced out. And I get it now. And I wonder if I went back with no knowledge, would I appreciate the structure more? And I probably would still say, do I really want to be spending 150 plus hours doing this game? Probably not. But I can kind of respect the way they went about tackling that challenge, if you like.
I get the structure, and it made sense. It's just, once you get to the story with Sigurd and Bassam and whatever Falke is trying to do, that's the only thing you want to do.
Yeah.
That arc, which is told over 5 arcs.
Yeah, it's not many.
Compared to, I think it's like 10, is really the only one I wanted to be with. That one and the ones in the cities that Hatham gave you.
Yeah.
I got to the point to where the Ragnar's sons, after there was only one point that interested me with them, and that was when we met, in my headcanon, Jacob and Evie's grandsire, and what happened after that. So it was just too much filler. Like, I liked the idea of, I can just take a couple hours tonight and I can just do this arc. It'll be like one episode of my favorite TV show, and I can come back tomorrow and do a different one.
Yeah.
But
I will say that I had the same thing that you mentioned a moment ago, which was you do your bit with Sigurd and or Basim, but then I would forget what we'd done. And who was Fulke? Oh, right, she was researching this, or she was this kind of belief. I'd forgotten all of that, and I just, maybe I'm getting old, mate. But between the major story beats, I would just forget where we got to, which was kind of frustrating. Anyway, I wanted to come back to the to the topic at hand.
Yeah, because I think we could go on for that.
I do
for a while.
So we'll put this link in the YouTube description when this episode goes up on YouTube. We can't fit so many characters into an audio description. So for those of you listening on audio, you won't be able to see this link, but we'll put this in YouTube. So back in 2018, there was a really interesting GDC presentation by, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Jean Guesdon, or Guesdon, I'm not really sure how you pronounce it. But anyway, he gave a really good presentation on the history and evolution of the Assassin's Creed brand. And one of the slides he presented, which dates back to 2010 when this document was written, was the 10 commandments of Assassin's Creed. Would you like to hear it? Because it is interesting.
2010 is the year that Brotherhood released, just for context on where we're at in the series.
Very good. Very good.
So, right. Yes, I would love to hear it.
Okay, so Assassin's Creed will always tell the story of the secret war between Assassins and Templars. Being an assassin... I'm
sure that's what Patrice wanted.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair, it doesn't mention from the way that Jean presented this, it sounded like it was a collaborative document that the team worked on, but I don't know exactly who contributed which bits. He doesn't mention it. Being an assassin doesn't make the main character a ruthless killer. He kills, but he has principles and never murders innocents. He avoids collateral damage as much as possible.
They threw that out in Revelations.
Right. So, yeah, hold that thought. The war between Assassins and Templars is the foundation of our franchise story in the past and present.
I totally agree with that one. Even if it's not Assassins and Templars, it's Order of Ancients, the Cult of Cosmos, the Hidden Ones, the pre-Assassin groups. I can totally back up on that one.
I've got a question mark over the Cult of Cosmos. We should come back to that in another episode. Anyway, the assassin should always be agile, socially skilled, unbeatable with a blade, and a stylish badass.
Okay, socially skilled is what's the word I want to use? Objective? Because while Connor can hide in a crowd, he is not good talking with the crowd.
No, he's also he's a physical tank of a guy. He's not exactly going to blend in, is he?
No, but he does the best. But when it comes to like when John Adams wasn't in the game. Sam Adams, or no, not Sam. It was Paul Revere. Touches him and he just looks at him like, "What you doing, mate? Don't touch me." That just kind of is like, yeah, you're not very good with the social stuff, man.
All right.
I also
go on, Declan.
Just gonna say, I also kind of disagree with that point. I know I shouldn't, but when it says unbeatable with a blade, I'm reading that and I'm like, that means you following that commandment, you cannot write any stories with a new person joining the creed because you're gonna have to always make them badass with a blade, and that's just unrealistic.
But how would you have gotten their memory? That's the thing. Like, their deaths are because of the Animus, and you can't control them, so you die in the Animus. If they were not a badass with the blade, you couldn't get their DNA.
But as more meaning, like when you look at Rebellion, for example, there's a lot of assassins in Rebellions who don't even use blades; they use hammers. So it's kind of like the idea of just badass with a blade is very broad and very specific. You know,
that's fair.
Can there not be an assassin who doesn't use blades but uses tools like rope darts, smoke bombs?
So Henry Green.
Yeah, essentially.
I mean, guys, all this speculation is great, but it's not what I've got on the card in front of me. So this is all, fundamentally. But, this is the key point. Like, it's almost like, can you be dogmatic over this stuff? Or actually, should there be some flexibility?
Yes.
All right. Point number 5. Pivotal moments in human history are the basis of our franchise. Assassin's Creed will always take a revisionist approach on real events. We'll use historical gaps to create our story.
They've done a good part with that throughout the series. So I totally get with that one.
Number 6. History should always be portrayed as relevant to our core audience, with facts that tie into present-day common knowledge and edgy modern art direction. Okay. I'm not sure what edgy modern art direction really means, so I'm going to skip over that one.
I'm looking at with the facts that tie into present and common knowledge. I'm looking at Discovery Tour right here.
Mm.
Common knowledge of history. That's their edgy art direction. I would kind of, if you look at Assassin's Creed 1's tone, is very saturated contrast compared to Odyssey's, which is very vibrant and lush. That is ticking the edgy art direction because more people do want that vibrant, alive games. Nobody is paying £700 for a HDR 4K TV for highly saturated, greyish Assassin's Creed 1 colours. They want bright, popping colours that make it realistic. So they've achieved that, in my opinion.
Well,
I
that can
suppose.
also come
Sorry,
down
Andrew, go on,
to
mate.
the scenery itself, like the buildings and the cities and everything like that. Because, like, if you look at Unity in particular, the fact that we can go to the Bastille after it was historically torn down kind of goes along with that edge, at that tenet.
Yeah, understood. Okay, number 7. This is a good one. Assassin's Creed is based on technology. Nothing is magical. Everything has a plausible technological explanation.
Well, it did for a long time.
And which game kind of threw that in the bin?
It really, actually, the only thing that really threw it in the bin for me was the one of the festivals.
Oh, you didn't say what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say Odyssey. But you didn't.
No, I totally understood that a lot of it had to do with either the animus or the multitude of pieces of Eden. The problem I have is there's one, oh, and I don't even remember what festival it is in Odyssey. Not Odyssey, in Origin, and geez Louise.
Is it the
In
one with
Valhalla.
the what are they
With the
called? The Wild
ghost.
Hunt?
Yeah, yeah. Where like
Oscaria?
where the one where like the ghost bears show up and Avor's like, you saw that, right? And they go, yeah, but there's supposedly no hallucination effects going on unless the torches you were lighting were laced with something.
Laced with mushroom powder.
Yeah, Volka's
Go on,
been
Declan.
dipping in her stores.
I'm gonna actually say that that tenant is technically slightly impossible in certain periods. So my plausible theory for the ghosts one is quite simple. The fact of humans have always seen stuff that's not there. It's one of the most basis for most folklore. You see a shape at the corner of your eye, you see a shadow when there's no shadows. It's an inherent belief of the supernatural. And now, with Eivor and the whole culture being very paganistic, believing in all gods and ghosts, there doesn't have to be a scientific mushrooms piece of Eden. It could just be that they're seeing it because of their belief system. They believe that if they light enough candles, they're going to get a vision of Odin or Thor. There could be no scientific belief behind that, but research has shown that it's called the placebo effect. If you believe something so much, you can witness it. So, does there have to be technological thing there? No. Enough belief can cause you to see something that in your memory you are going to see that of, yeah, I saw that, it happened. Is there mushrooms? Is there a wind or a leaf mistaken for God? No, it could just be a simple placebo effect. You believe you've done something to trigger a vision and you see the vision. And then that's probably disagreeable, I know, but this is kind of how I've thought about the psychology behind it.
I can understand that, going with the idea that it's a memory-based thing instead of like how Assassin's Creed 3 handled like UFOs and Bigfoot, and how Syndicate handled Spring Hill Jack. So yeah, I could see it going that, using the route of memory, but at the same time, since we're looking at memories through the animus, you just have to define the science behind how your genetic memory works.
And to be honest, from my understanding of the law, I don't think anyone's ever explained if genetic memory, and it's a question I've asked for ages and it's very debatable in the community, is genetic memory based on what you see? So, like migration, if the first bird flew from England to Africa, is that genetic memory stored because you flew there, or is it just inherently there because it's there? Because it's not what you witnessed along the journey, it's the journey. So I really think the genetic memory versus remembered memory and how the animus decodes genetic memory is still a questionable clause, because if it's not remembered history, it's something else, then anything to do with placebo, um, mental health that can distort memories, that puts a whole span in the work on what you can do. Whereas if genetic memory is remembered memory, then mental health, placebo effects, all that could alter how a memory is seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that's kind of how Vidic explained it to Desmond, as like, well, migration and all that kind of stuff is genetic memory instead of lived memory. But is it genetic memory of the first, or did something happen to make them remember it that way? So I totally get where you're coming from. It's something that would have, for us to understand, they'd have to clearly define it.
And I think if they clearly define it, it would probably ruin the magic of Assassin's Creed, because having the idea of is it living memory transferred to genetic or something else, having that little mystery, especially now is we know that sages aren't parasitic hosts, they're just memories. That puts a little thing of, okay, if that's a remembered memory of your past life, then that must mean genetic memories tie in with remembered memory, but that may not be the truth. So to me, it adds a little bit of mystery to the franchise that should never be solved.
Which is fair. And I felt the same way about never seeing the truth of the Isu, but we're getting more and more into that.
But there's still tons of mystery, in my opinion.
Very true. Very true.
You would love an Isu game, wouldn't you, Declan? If there was a game just set, 77,000 years ago, you'd be there.
Pretty much. I think, to be honest, I know we're off topic, but if...
We don't have topics. What are you talking about? Our topics are just suggestions.
If Al-Malim never pulled out the Apple of Eden, if the Ark of Covenant was never shown in Assassin's Creed 1, I would never have continued the franchise. It's those pieces of Eden that have kept me going so long, because I want to know more about the Isu. I want to know their culture. I want to know their history, who their founding fathers were, what their laws were. And the last 3 games have given us a lot, but to me, it doesn't make sense.
Well, the last 3 games, you don't know if it's true or not.
Exactly.
That's the bit, isn't it? It's all simulations within simulations, or calculations, or
a memory viewed through mythology.
Yeah.
And
so,
I personally like it. I'm weird. I just think, I'm sorry for interrupting. I just think it's one of these things of, you can't tell an Isu memory from something as old as Bayek, Cassandra, or Eivor without a mythological veil. And if you try to give, let's say, let's take the Sage Elf, Eivor, for a second, and you give her a mushroom to remember Asgard and Jotunheim, and it was 100% Isu structures and clothing, how can you logically define that in the series? How can she logically see that? To then say, okay, this is Asgard, Jotunheim, this is Thor, Odin, this is the Hall of Mead. This is because it's how her culture views it. To me, that's more a canon and realistic way of seeing the Isu. It's then, how do you unpick the truth? And I do actually understand where everyone's coming from. There's so much filter. How do you unpick the truth? You need a catalyst to unpick the truth. And Odyssey had Alfir. Eivor has Odin and Basim. But if you just need that catalyst, if that makes sense.
So one question I wanted to check with you then, Declan, is You would love an Isu-based game. Have you? And we've discussed this, but my memory is terrible. Have you played Dawn of Ragnarok?
Yes.
Did that scratch that Isu itch for you? Again, it's all through that mythological veil, so I'm guessing probably not.
Oh heck no! I'm angry at that DLC.
You're angry with it. Why are you angry with it?
So to offer
It's a lie.
well, to offer a fair basis, so I'm not like just dunk on it. I think the developers did do a absolute phenomenal job with the DLC, so I will give them praise. However, Dawn of Ragnarok is the battleground of the gods. End of. The Ragnarok is literally Loki kills Balder, which he admits in the Animus glitches. He is then imprisoned under Earth. His brother is then killed by his other brother, which, in all fairness, they could have wrote an Isu law that Loki's brother was killed by Loki's other son as a blood payment for Loki killing Balder, his brother. So in a blood payment, they had to kill one of each other. It would tie mythology. It would be a very dark, but it would show how Isu law can work. That'll give revenge. Loki will go into hiding. Loki will start a war, and then in the Forgotten Realms free game mode, when Thor's like, the enemy are at the door, you will now know why the enemy's at the door, because Loki's bringing them to the door with his daughter Hel, because Hel is his daughter, and they bring the war to the door, and they fight, because that's Ragnarok. It's the gods fighting. And Surtur should have been a personification through Eivor's fantasy of a solar flare, not an Isu, because the last line of Ragnarok does say that Surtur will raise his fire sword of the heavens and cleanse the world in flames, and humans will walk from the roots of Yggdrasil unscathed and inherit the earth, along with the children like Balder, who survived. So it would have made sense if Surtur was not an Isu, but actually a personification of the flare. So when the flare hit, the first two humans to walk out, and the remnants of Balder and the other children of the AC that survived would be sages, and it would have worked nicely in a lore point of view.
That is, well, what can I say? I tell you, the only counter argument is that my assumption is they wrote Dawn of Ragnarok like they did so that they could then continue that story with the what was that other mode, the rogue light mode that was added,
The Forgotten Saga.
So maybe they wrote it the way they did, Declan, to leave themselves some room for a further game mode. But hey, I'm not going to argue with your knowledge of Norse mythology.
So, like, the way you're looking at it, the way that would have made a better story to me anyway. The way, like, I can't even remember half of the story of the way Dawn of Ragnarok was presented because of how it was presented. $40 for an 10-hour game story, and then 30 hours of filler. I played it all. Wasn't worth $40, but that's neither here nor there. Leading that into Forgotten Saga would have made more sense if you could understand how they connected. And I feel like I don't even remember the Forgotten Saga. So I'm Odin in that point. I get to the end, I forget, do it again, I forget, do it again, I forget. Which was a good way to, in my opinion, a good way to set up the lore behind why it's roguelite. You just don't remember what you did, so you go and try it again. But when
I thought that
add,
was I've said this before, I thought that was a really smart way of using or adapting existing storytelling and existing lore to justify the game mode. I thought it was smart. I would just say I've only ever played like an hour of it, never even beat the first boss, but I just really didn't enjoy it. So I stopped and I watched Access the Animus like every other sensible person to get myself caught up.
I actually enjoyed the game mode because it was so different. Like, I was happy to die because it was different. Okay, and I knew I wasn't just going to steamroll it like I steamrolled every other bit of content. Like, that's what fears me about the last chapter. It's going to be another arc, and I'm going to steamroll it because I'm max level. I got everything unlocked, and I think I have almost 75 mastery points in each diamond.
Wow.
And I can tell you that it goes up to 1,000. I know someone who maxed out one of them.
Did they do
So
that genuinely, or did they do that through editing
no,
game values in
he
cheat engine or
plays
something?
on Xbox Series X.
Oh, so
So
no hacking. All right.
what he did was he works from home, and he keeps it open a lot. So when the store would refresh and you could buy a mastery point, he'd buy a mastery point. Go back to work, store would refresh, he'd buy a mastery point. That's why he also has played over 1,000 hours in the game.
Wow.
The other thing I was going to ask, have you guys read the Dawn of Ragnarok comic tie-in?
Nope.
That tells the story of how Baldur got to being captured. By the end of it, at the end of each of the 3 issues, there's someone outside of the mythology going, "Hey, but I heard it this way. Hey, I heard it this way." And the very last panel is Loki, Basm in the modern day, reading a book of Norse myths, going, "Oh, I read this 3-issue comic. Don't even know if it's real or not." According to the comic, Baldur was dead before Odin even found out he was gone.
But I thought from how the story and the game plays out that Baldur is trying to survive the doom and does survive.
But
No,
the way the story folds out in the game is that because his mind is in the Salakar.
Oh, jeez. Oh. Sorry, guys.
plus
This is my limit of I just don't care. It's not to be cruel to you, Andrew, and I
No,
appreciate you
I
understand
mean,
the stuff. I'm
like,
like, oh god, come on.
I run a lore podcast and I see
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
this and I go, how am I supposed to care when you're just pulling me around like I'm a lost dog?
plus there is, and I've already explained it once, there is a secret hint to this, to Baldur being already dead in the very beginning of the DLC, but it's so skippable nobody will notice it.
Okay.
So the basic hint is when he's talking, he's like, and forgot her name. She was, nothing could kill Baldur. If you go to the room where you've got to look at stuff, there's a note that will trigger the cutscene to continue the story. But there's a table with mistletoe that if you read the note to continue the story, you cannot read the note on the mistletoe. It's completely. I've reloaded it 6 times. I've tried it 6 times. Once you read that note, you cannot read the mistletoe. If you read the mistletoe first, it will say he's found a way to get around to get Baldur. So it's basically, I can't remember the whole thing, but it hints that mistletoe is Baldur's weakness. But anybody who knows Norse mythology knows from that point straight away that no, he's found a way to kill Baldur, because Baldur is killed by mistletoe. And to me, that's a hint very close on that Baldur's already dead, because Baldur cannot live if he goes near mistletoe. But you have to click the mistletoe first before you click the letter to start the cutscene. If you skip the mistletoe and go for the note, you'll never see a note that tells that he's found a way to basically get around Baldur's immunity, which is mistletoe. Because mistletoe is the only thing that the queen ever asked to look after Baldur, and it is what Loki caused, I can't remember his name, to kill Baldur with a dart of mistletoe.
Yep. And then when you get to the end of the Lost Saga and you see the ending, you just kind of go, okay, I'm missing something. How, why, what is going on? So like even after listening to Access the Animus's lore breakdown, and I can't like give them enough praise. The what Marco and Sari, what they find and how they break it down is genius.
Yeah. It's like a proper Gordian knot type of problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to unpick.
Especially when it comes to the language. I'm not even going to try to learn that language.
We should return just fleetingly to the
Your topic at hand.
Yes. Now I was talking.
Malaka.
I was talking you gentlemen through the 10 Commandments document, which dates back to 2010, and we got through point number 7, which was nothing is magic. So, point number 8. Here we go. Assassin's Creed is about digging in a character's past through their DNA in order to understand what really happened in key historical moments.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they would stop drinking herbal tea and hallucinating over their mythology.
Indeed. All right, number 9. Since the player relives the deeds of his kin through his DNA, the IP cannot be about the future. DNA of unborn people does not exist. That makes pretty straightforward.
Makes sense. There is a little bit of a cross that they did with that, though, that changed in Origins when they started saying that you could take any DNA and putting it into the Animus.
Yes.
Well, I guess that really started with 4, didn't it? With the Sample 17 project.
Oh,
because you're playing as Noob going through Kenway's line.
They've gamified the memories, haven't they? Abstergo Entertainment. Well, it was Liberation, wasn't it? Did that first.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's true, because that was from Subject 1. Though,
side note, I always liked the erudito sort of hidden messages in Liberation.
Yes.
That's quite a nice way and a different way of exposing the modern day and what is true memories and what are edited, gamified memories.
Yeah, the way that they really spelled it out in Black Flag, but saying that Liberation was a game by Abstergo.
Yes.
But Erudito had said, yeah, but that's not, they changed it. Here's what really happened. Especially with the ending on the Capitoline Triad talking to Eve. At least that's how I remember the ending.
Is that in Liberation, is it?
Yeah. When she puts the disc together.
Damn, my memory is so bad. Do you know, I feel like this might be a really stupid comment. I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game, not properly, for months. I played about an hour of Valhalla a few weeks ago when we got the latest patch, just messing around, did some side stuff. It's quite nice to go back, actually. Quite enjoyed it. But I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game properly for 6+ months. I've mostly just been playing Horizon, Forbidden West, and then I went back to Zero Dawn. And I feel
nobody can fault you for that.
Well, no, and they're amazing games. My God, one day we'll do a podcast called Let's Talk Horizon. But anyway, I feel like my Assassin's Creed muscle hasn't been exercised, and my memories just turned to shit. Anyway,
I totally get that. I get made fun of every weekend by a friend of mine because I'm always playing some kind of Assassin's Creed game, and he goes, "Don't you play anything else?" And I've been playing Shadow of Mordor for the last month and a half.
Nice. But yeah, it's I'll get on to so the last point of the 10 Commandments, right? Assassin's Creed can bend historical accuracy but cannot create a Uchronia.
I don't know what a Uchronia is.
Well, I didn't either, and I'm going to just look it up again to make sure I get this right.
It's essentially, well, James gets correct spelling because James is correcting me. It's essentially they cannot create alternate universes or parallel dimensions, aka the
calculations.
No, more Tyranny of the Kings.
Okay.
Tyranny of the King, because
Tyranny of King Washington. Okay, yeah, that's a complete alternate timeline. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll tell you what, I don't know if this is really one or not, but one that I think of is, actually it's here in the Wikipedia article. Middle Earth would be an example. Another one would be, think of like the world of Game of Thrones. So it's kind of all medieval, but it's not our medieval, if you see what I mean.
So basically they can't take the... so showing us the fate of Atlantis the way they did. But
No.
that's explained away through a simulation created by Alethea.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's the way around it. I think it's kind of hard because when you think of Fate of Atlantis, one could argue that Atlantis portrays so much in human history and mythology that if you were to portray it the way that it did, it wouldn't be a Uchronia because it's an unsolved mystery, because it's something that's meant to have existed but doesn't.
So Uchronia is an alternate timeline.
Yeah, so it seems from my understanding of what it is and what they say in the wiki, which is what's it gone? Generally loosely based on real, but no real time setting. This can, but with, but I believe that within context, so this can be extended to alternate reality. So it's basically arguing that.
So that we wouldn't like to be able to see like Camelot because we
Yeah,
see that so much as a fictional time period.
yeah. Even if they had it, and I'm going to shorten
Unless
the
they say that it was an Isu city and this is how it actually would have looked.
Yeah, because it's the term Uchronia refers to a hypothetical or fictional time period of our world in contrast to altogether fictional lands or worlds. See, it's really just the whole idea of Arno could not have killed Neapolitan. Ugh.
Neapolitan?
Yeah,
Ice cream. Yes. Couldn't kill the ice cream.
We knew who you meant. Yes,
Yes.
Emperor Neapolitan. Yep.
yeah, he couldn't kill him, or a really good one that was argued in our Discord, the Animus one, about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. They could never really state that Charles Darwin actually made an evolution based on the Isu, and we've just covered it up because you would then create an alternate reality that Charles Darwin was not a scientist, he was either a Templar or an assassin, and that kind of bends the rules of what we know of an historical figure. So you could, to be like an assassin or Templar, you have to bend history to a point, but you cannot just completely rip history apart. So the true ending of Odyssey, where you let Elf, forgot her name, go, is historically accurate because she didn't die till later on. If you kill her, even though that's a simulation, that is actually bending reality because she didn't die then. So that is a Uchronia right there because you're bending reality. But with Odyssey saying it's a simulation reconstruction, you can then fight that by saying, actually, no, it's just a reconstruction.
Yeah,
But
they
if,
really went against that one
yeah,
after saying, no, let's see what the Isu, like really diving into the Isu and their history. They've really kind of thrown that one out.
yeah, but it's kind of a hard one with that because the whole franchise is based on the Isu, so they've got to tread very lightly. I think the best examples would have to, in my opinion, be Tyranny of King Washington because that argues that he went mad, built a pyramid, had an apple of Eden, and
Yep.
Connor could turn into a bear.
And they really just kind of say this is what they turn it into a calculation, except for somehow you get more magic tea and you turn into a bear. But you can clearly see that bear is an animus construct. So it's
a thread. It's a it's a very thin thread, and one could argue that what Avos sees is a Uchronia. You're bending will because you're creating an alternate reality. But then one could also argue that you
So
can't.
at that point, you can argue that your mythology is a Uchronia.
Yeah, but then you have the same counter argument that you cannot realistically take somebody from a time period that is like that and give them a complete understanding of Isu knowledge without a catalyst. So you cannot. It's basically the idea of no Uchronia is an impossible balance. It's a paradox for Assassin's Creed because you cannot, in a sense, give a caveman a lighter and create a game where he knows it's a lighter and he knows that the flint causes spark, which causes ignition of the fluid. Because then if you create a game where he sees it as a magical stick with fire, you're changing reality, and because it's not that.
But you can give a Spartan mercenary a magic stick and have her live for 1,800 years.
Yeah, because it's still because
you don't change history. She hides
Yeah.
out in the back, destroying things that could change history.
She just always happens to be on the opposite side of the world when important stuff like Ezio's adventures and Altair's adventures and Rotun Hecaton's adventures are all taking place. So, yeah.
I really would love to see her teach Yona Hote how to communicate with eagles.
Ooh.
That'd be so cool. But I think the thing is what you just said, Andrew, that could actually exist in law, because that point is in you can't take a fixed point in time. I'm referring to Dr. Who, so please don't at me, people. It's the whole bit that you can't change a fixed point in time. But Cassandra could teach other assassins abilities, because if their future past the game is never explored, that is not a fixed point in time. So you cannot create a Uchronia by saying, actually, Cassandra met with Altair before he died and locked himself in like an hour before he died and give him some advice, because you're not changing time, because no one's ever said what happened that last hour before he died, if that makes sense. There is a lot of flexibility in the rules, and Cassandra is one of them. Cassandra can basically do whatever the hell she likes.
Yeah, Cassandra, the mythology and the calculations, like the idea that Layla and Desmond now live in the gray, viewing simulations from the nexus point. You really don't know what you're going to get out of that. That could be a Uchronia, but I think we're arguing over a term that's not necessarily important for what we were talking about.
To be honest, I think on the point of what makes Assassin's Creed game is, does it adhere to history as best as possible, because no one really knows what history was? Can they have flexibility in how they tell history if they add characters that didn't exist in history? Well, yeah, because they can break them whenever they want. Was there any historical fact that Jacob slapped the Prime Minister of England during Syndicate? No, but you could add it in, and you can't argue that it's not historically accurate, because no one said it wasn't.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, Jacob took Miss Disraeli down to Devil's Corner. Nobody in their right mind would have written that down. That would have been, if anyone knew about that, that would have been a controversy of the day, and that's about it. Because the one thing that I really like about Assassin's Creed is that while in history we don't know anything about Ezio, but he hung out with Machiavelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Il Magnifico, Bartolomeo, all these historical people he hung out with, but we never saw him, because the more powerful people who controlled the history didn't want you to know that he went around killing all of their friends. Essentially.
Imagine picking up a textbook in history and it's like, this is the diary of Machiavelli. Today, this guy in a hood killed my friend, but I don't know why.
Well, think about, I'm playing through Brotherhood right now. And Machiavelli's line about, I'm going to write a book about you one day, make it short. And they're talking about Machiavelli's Il Principe. Yes. When historically that's believed to be written about Cesare. But that little twist saying, no, this is about Ezio, but Cesare or Cesare's followers are like, historically go, nah, this isn't about some random dude who killed Cesare. This is about Cesare. So, and you see that all throughout the series, which I really like about it. Vidic started with it going, oh, you have some hidden knowledge, or are you just taking the word of your high school history teacher? That conversation about how he viewed the Bible and how it might not be true, because humans can write whatever they want. And that's how we view history. history is written by the victors. We say that so many times. Like, we just got past Columbus Day, right? It was just this last week. And when you're a kid, you don't realize how much of a jerk he was. And it's not until you start to get older and actually look at his diary that you go, oh, he wasn't a nice man. He was a bad man. Like, he convinced Native Americans to give him food that they couldn't, because they only grew enough for themselves. They didn't grow surplus, but he convinced them to give them food for his journey back because he knew about star charts and that a lunar eclipse was coming. And he said that my God is stronger than this. In 1 week, the moon will bleed red or something similar unless you give me all your food. You have 1 week. And then it happens, and they believe him to be in truth with God, with their gods, and give them their food.
Douche.
Didn't know that story.
So if we were to spin this back onto the topic of what makes Assassin's Creed,
and that man's an assassin holding an apple of Eden. Come on.
Exactly. So if you were to switch it onto like the topic of what makes Assassin's Creed, people say it's the history, but it's not history as we know it. As you said with Warren Vidic, it's actually the unexplored history, the reality of history. You know, Columbus was a dick. You know, some of the characters in these stories were not really nice people, but in history, like Leonardo da Vinci in history books seems pretty cool. In the game, he just seems even better.
He's a bro.
He's a bro. But you know what I mean? It's like when people say, oh, that game can't be Assassin's Creed because it's not historically accurate. But what makes something historically accurate? Because, as Warren Vidic says, as paraphrasing, it's the victors who write the work, so how do you know that our history books aren't telling the truth? So, if it has a little leeway in history, does it make an Assassin's Creed game because it's not 100% accurate? Maybe because it's just toying with the secret history.
So one of the things that I really liked about the older games is that they went to historical locations that we didn't see often in video games. The Renaissance, the Third Crusade.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like Black Flag and they go, oh, well, pirates are fun. Let's do pirates. Oh, we've done one revolution. Let's do the Paris one, the French Revolution. Yes, it was only Paris that went and revolted against the king. But we see that they can change history in little ways. Like, I don't remember historically how. Oh shoot! Now I can't even remember his name. The Parisian Grandmaster, Mirabeau.
Francois de la Serre. Oh,
Mirabeau.
Okay.
I'm talking. Like, didn't he die of some natural cause?
Was it a heart attack or was it completely unknown? I mean, obviously, modern medicine might and autopsy might know how he died, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just a natural death.
And then they say, no, he really died because his follower poisoned him. And they do that all over the series, like Tesla faking his death and then being part of the Philadelphia Project. It's all over.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I love. Like, really, that's what got me into the series. Like, really got me into the series.
So, I have one last thought to bring up. As a topic. It's very rare that I have topics in my mind. So, the last thing then about what makes Assassin's Creed game, if we strip back the history, strip back the gameplay, strip back everything, the core I want to discuss then for a little bit is, could a game feature no assassin robes, third party looking in, no easy stuff, but keep the core philosophies that we see running through and still make it Assassin's Creed? That whole freedom versus order debate that's been going for a long time, if it kept that central theme but didn't have Isu or be an assassin, would it still fit into the formula of it's an Assassin's Creed game?
So Odyssey.
Yeah, because people can disagree, but I definitely really do think Odyssey is an Assassin's Creed game through the philosophy. The way the Spartans worked, that was a very strict order from history. They would lock some of the people up in the mountains, and if they didn't survive, they'd throw them off the cliff. That's like a very dictatorship order. And Cassandra, even though she rebelled against that because she wanted to save her brother, that's rebel against an order that's been in place, and then she completely destroys the entire cult of Cosmos, which
Well,
was
it's that order that caused her to lose her brother, because they were so against the Isu bloodline that they tell the Oracle of Delphi that he's got to go off the cliff, and it just so happens to also chase her, but that doesn't. Oh goodness, I can't remember her name, but the old lady that her name started with a C, and she basically said, "You
Creases.
can, yes, you can kill me, or you can save this baby from the burning building." Hated that moral dilemma.
Save
But
the baby.
save the baby and then find her later.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the kind of thing. It's like you're not an assassin, you're a mercenary, you don't have the robes, but you believe in freedom, and you believe that their total control is not right because of what it did to your family.
To be honest, that is the crux of Assassin's Creed. Because not to be rude, Ezio rebelled against the entire bourgeoisie because of his death of his father and his brother. He didn't do it because of his assassin lineage. He did it because, pure and simple as Cassandra, revenge, and it took him 10 years to actually become an assassin.
Well, it took him longer than 10.
But the whole fate to that point is literally just pure revenge against an order that orchestrated your parents' death based on who they
and
were.
at the beginning, he didn't want to do revenge. Like, he just wanted to protect his mother and sister. Like, he had planned on going farther to Spain, which would have probably been worse for him, considering the Inquisition was getting ready to start, or had started. But yeah, you're not wrong. When you look at Ezio in particular, he's motivated by revenge into, up until sequence, not 13, sequence 10, 11, once he realizes what they're after. And it's at that very last moment, he's been inducted into the Brotherhood. You've had your Pope fist fight, and he goes, "No, I'm finally over this." And that's when when I think he truly becomes an assassin, when he truly follows the creed and embraces what it means.
And I'm about to get loads of pitchforks thrown at me. I think Cassandra as well had a similar moment, but not I'm going to be an assassin. But I strongly believe when she touched the pyramid and she saw Pythagoras and we saw like the assassin's future, I really believe that she had a moment there where she realized that this order that she's took down to be rebuilt is never going to stop. And so many lives are going to be lost because of a crazed order. Like, my brother was lost, my family was devastated because of them. I have an extended life, maybe I could do something about it. And she, in my opinion, worked in the shadows to try and keep the order in check when people couldn't, because there would have been times in history, as seen by Rogue, where the Brotherhood may go too far and someone needs to clean up their mess, or the Templars may go too far and someone needs to clean up the mess where assassins can't. And I believe that that's where Cassandra fitted herself that as the keeper, she would keep the balance until she handed the staff over. But I'm
That
probably wrong.
I don't think is how that's meant. I think
Probably not.
she's well, and the only I would have agreed with you before the crossover story, but I believe the idea of her being the keeper. At first, we believe it's just for her to hold on to the staff to give Delilah eventually, the heir of memories. But when we see the crossover story, she's collecting pieces of Eden all across the globe. And I really believe that she is the keeper. I don't remember the full title right off the top of my head, but she's the keeper of like picking up all of these pieces of Eden, trying to pull him off the board for some unknown reason. I believe it's Alethea manipulation, but it's definitely got more to do with her pulling off pieces of Eden than saying the assassins have gone too far, so let's thin their ranks a little bit. The Templars have gone too far, let's thin their ranks a little bit. Because if that was the case, World War II wouldn't have happened.
True. To be honest, I never put the crossover into my mind because I've never played it from the Odyssey side. I've just played the Valhalla side. And the Valhalla side just left me the impression that she's bloody Smaug.
Well,
she's just got a cave.
The Odyssey side can be summed up with Cassandra taking a vacation, finding an apple of Eden that that apple of Eden is what takes the power out of her spear, and then she decides that her life is never going to be the same, so she needs to basically listen to what Alethea wanted her to do.
Okay, well, Leafy's manipulating her.
Yeah, and that's why that's actually what's got me most excited about Mirage. What is going on with Alethea and Loki? And the sad thing for me is knowing that we're only going to get a bookend, beginning and end for modern day. So maybe we'll understand, but it's hard to tell. I want more modern day just from a story perspective because I don't trust Alethea and Loki with everything that we've seen. Like, I can't believe that all he wants to do is find Hela, or sorry, that's Marvel. Find Hel, Jormungandr, and Fenrir. So I feel like there's more.
I won't lie, I still have issues because no one in Ubisoft's answered how many times I've posted this in different servers. People keep going on and on and on and on that he's looking for the children, Jormungandr, Fenrir, and Hel. But what about his other child? Like, Loki, canonically in mythology, has 5 kids. He has Jormungandr.
If he goes looking for an 8-legged horse,
No, there's not an 8-legged. No, I'm not on about the 8-legged horse.
you're not talking about Sleipnir?
No, if I was, because that would be freaking trippy. No,
yes, sir.
It's because in mythology, in the Prose Edda, he has 2 children with his Aesir wife. He has 2 wives. He has an affair with the Jotun
Yes,
wife.
the Alethea Angrabata.
Yeah,
She was the affair. She was the giantess.
and that's who
But I
Fenrir.
don't remember who he was married to.
He was married to an Aesir wife called Signin, and they had 2 children, Nafi and Vali. And when they couldn't get Balder from the clutches of Hel, as punishment, when Loki was tied up, Narfi had to kill Vali Vali had to kill Narfi as a punishment for Loki killing Balder. So it was like an eye for an eye punishment, but Vali was turned into a wolf, and then Vali had to tear apart Narif just because an eye for an eye. But I really think we all go on about like Jormungandr, Hel, them children. I still believe that his revenge on the Mad One is more to do with, yeah, I know I killed Balder, I'm effed up because Balder was a dick, but you didn't have to force my brother, my son, to kill his brother as a punishment because it was my punishment, not my child's. So I don't think he's after their children. I think he's actually more after Vari, if that makes sense.
It would make sense, especially if they had introduced us to somebody outside of Alethea as Angrabata. So, like, I get where you're coming from, and it would make more sense to fall in line with the mythology that way. It's we just haven't seen that side of the mythology if they're even going to take that as part of their Isu lore.
And that's the problem I'm having personally. It's why I do agree with everyone. There's so much mythology filter and not truth. It's blurred the lines. Like, these stories that I think they should do, I say out of theory because I'm with everyone that the route they're going, it just makes no logical sense. And I'm agreeing with everyone that there is too much myth filter. And I know I keep going on about the myth filter, but it's because how else can you describe the lore of the Isu when all we're shown is a myth filter? If that makes sense.
And now with Dawn of Ragnarok, they showed Odin with his first, I think it was his first wife, Balder's mother, and then basically going and saying, no, well, you didn't really get married. You married her because it was a tribal marriage, so we would join our clans. And so without seeing what really happened, that part of it's confusing. So I could see something similar happening. So it just, we haven't seen it yet, so it's hard to say what's going on.
If you stripped away the myth filter, let's say you had a game where the character was a sage and they fully awaken, remember, whatever the right word is, all of their repressed memories, then you could use the animus to explore those memories and have a game that is fully real construction of the Isu time. And that would be law compliant. Would
Absolutely.
it be an Assassin's Creed game? I would say, yeah, I guess.
I would agree with that because it fits within the universe. It fits within the lore. Like I've always, I guess I wouldn't say always, and I don't remember if I brought this up with my podcast on Elijah, but I've been thinking that we've progressed so far and that the Ezio collection really wasn't a full remake. What if you remade the Ezio collection, but instead of Desmond in the modern day, you're playing as his son Elijah, and instead of the Subject 16 puzzles, you have glyphs about Aita and bringing his life into form, seeing more of the Isu story. And you remake the history of Ezio's life in the newer Animus, but it's completely new modern day. So you're continuing that story.
That would actually be quite a fun or quite an interesting way of doing a remake. So yes, the historical segment is the same.
And because you're putting it in a different Animus, you could say, well, now you can make choices.
that would piss off a lot of people.
If now our wolf mom can't say you missed the hug, start over from the beginning.
Did you just call her the wolf mum?
And she knows who I'm talking about.
That's adorable. That's yeah, I like that. What you said a moment ago about it could be a game set in the universe, is that more about what it is now? Because to come back now, of course, these 10 commandments were written 12 years ago. Like you said, Andrew, this is when Brotherhood was being developed and released. It's a long time ago, and the games have evolved and gameplay has evolved. I wonder if those commandments can be too restrictive, and whether actually sometimes they should be bent, ignored, forgotten, because ultimately it just makes for a wider variety of interesting games.
Yeah, and we're getting to the point now, especially with the idea of the Infinity Hub and 2 main teams, that they need to branch out, or they're going to be, the series is going to become stale again, like it did with Syndicate.
that was a point I wanted to mention earlier when you talked about Infinity earlier and the modern day, and it's one of the commandments. We explore historical, or we explore our ancestors' memories because it informs what we're trying to do now in 2012 or in 2020 or whenever. And I think this was a point. So we heard in the Ubisoft event that modern day is being, let's say, reformed. We don't know what form that will take yet. And of course, lots of people, and myself included, were kind of worried about that, because I enjoy the modern day connection, where you either you're seeing the ghosts of your ancestors, like when Desmond is exploring Monteriggioni and he sees the ghosts of Ezio and his family fleeing, or you're parkouring through the Colosseum or whatever. And I think there was an opinion I read on Twitter, and I think it came from Leo K. I always try to attribute these things correctly, but it may not have, but I think it was Leo. And he made a good point, which is, look, if you're invested in this universe and this franchise and you want to follow them on day, but you've got Red as a massive open world with 200 hours of content that you just don't care about, it's not your style, actually taking the modern day out could be a good thing, because you don't need to wade through 200 hours of Japanese exploration to get 3 hours of modern day cutscenes or whatever that advance the plot. You can go and read the plot on the Infinity Hub, or whether it's in a Netflix comic or a webtoon, or however the hell they decide to tell the modern day story. Breaking it out could be a good thing for those fans who are invested in the plot, or maybe the fans that turn more towards the transmedia because Hexay doesn't interest them, or Mirage doesn't interest them, or Red doesn't interest them, or Jade, the mobile game. Like I've said on the previous recordings in recent weeks, personally, I don't play games on mobile, so I probably will never play Jade. But if there's modern day stuff in there, I guess I'm going to have to pay attention to your show, Andrew, or watch Access the Animus to stay in touch. And maybe pulling modern day out, which would break one of these commandments, is actually better for the long-term health of the franchise and keeping those players that care about it, informed and engaged. So maybe these rules are genuinely, I don't mean this sarcastically, but maybe they're genuinely more guidelines, and some can be bent and some can be ignored.
I don't even remember where that quote comes from now. They're more like guidelines than rules. Oh, it's the Pirates Code in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, that was it. Yep. Thank you, mate. I knew it came from somewhere and I couldn't remember myself. Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean.
So I can agree that those tenets are, as for lack of a better term, antiquated. They're old, and for the series to grow needs to move on from some of those tenets. Now with the Infinity Hub, now that gives us an opportunity to solidify within that hub the true, utter canon. So we see so many differences between the novels and the games about how things happened. Infinity Hub gives us the opportunity to say, this is, without a doubt, what happened in our history. This is not a calculation. This isn't an alternate reality. This is what happened. This isn't a memory distortion. This is what happened. The question I have is, if the Infinity Hub is free, which we don't know almost anything about. I mean, we're looking another 2 or 3 years before it comes out. If it's free, do they integrate it with the games by saying you have to get to a certain point to unlock this email, this video, kind of like how the multiplayer videos would unlock when you get to a certain level? Or would it just all be there? So, and I ask that because maybe I don't want to play Jade, but I want to know what happened in the modern day. Can I just go through and get all of the modern day lore from Jade and not worry about it? What kind of incentive would there be to play Red or Jade or Hexay?
That is a really good point, because if you've got the choice between spending $70 or $70, £70 seems to be the new standard
Yeah,
price for these games.
it's the PS5, Xbox Series price. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got a choice between paying $70 for Hexa, Red, whatever, or just catching up on the modern day story for free or very, very cheaply through any other media.
Could you
I don't
imagine
know.
like getting to the end of Red and then all of a sudden seeing, hey, Will, this is what happened in ancient Japan in an email.
Yeah.
I found this piece of Eden. It's here. We need to get it before Abstergo. That makes like that at that point you have no attachment to the shinobi or anybody else who in Red. And you're just like, oh, well, I guess I don't have to play that game anymore.
Yep. Yep.
Which I guess I could see them doing if you want to limit. Limit's the wrong term. If you want to please everybody in the series that's already a fan. Because look at how many people were like, oh, the modern day's horrible. Kill Desmond, get rid of it. Oh, I miss the modern day. It was the best part. You can't make everybody happy. And maybe this separation will give more people happiness within the series.
That's true. Connected to that was one of the other comments they made at the Ubi Forward event. I think we've discussed this already, so I'm probably repeating it. But one of their franchise directors, brand directors, I don't remember all the job titles. They said something like, "We are not going to try to make future games appeal to everybody."
Was that Mark Alexicote?
I think so.
He is the overall steward of Assassin's Creed.
Right.
Executive producer, I believe, is his official title.
Yeah. So again, that is because when Mirage trailer was released, I'm interested, and I've said before, I'm on record as saying that I'm actually looking forward to a change of style of Assassin's Creed game. I've enjoyed the open world games. I enjoyed other open world games, like I mentioned earlier. I've spent hundreds of hours playing Horizon this year. I like that format of just open exploration, but I am definitely ready for something different. Having said that, the number of people who are fans of the RPG games who have said, I'm not interested in Mirage. I prefer, and I only want an open world experience. Maybe this decision by Ubisoft is actually one of the best decisions they can make with where the franchise is now. It's just too hard to try to cater to so many different communities.
If
so
they
let's
want
not
to
try.
continue
Let's
to
do something
grow,
different.
If they want to continue to grow, like you can't say, okay, we're only going to put out this 500-hour RPG every 2 to 3 years. I mean, how many of our old players are going, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm good. Bye. I'll keep my money. But at the same time, you can say, sprinkled in with those 2 or 3 years, you'll have a smaller game that's different in a setting you wouldn't necessarily think about. In my opinion, old school fans, the people who like the idea of going to the Renaissance where nobody has gone before, or the Third Crusade where nobody has gone before, they'll eat it up. I'm out of the 3 games that were announced, not including Jade. I'm excited to an extent over each one of them for different reasons. I'm excited for the difference that of Mirage, learning of Basim's story, to try to the different. We've had RPGs for so long. I want something different. I need something different.
Yeah.
To just keep me interested. Like every time DLC for Valhalla comes out, I'm like, yay, more content to add to the 94 achievements I already have in this game.
Dear.
The 435 hours I have in my file.
I tell you, right, I know we've spoke. We this tonight's episode is all about, or in theory, all about what makes an Assassin's Creed. And we spent a lot of time talking about Valhalla, which I think we can justify because it is still the current, game, and they're still adding content to it. It will be very interesting in a year or 2 years, or maybe 5 years. I don't know how long we'll be chatting and recording, but it will be interesting to come back and think about Valhalla with the benefit of hindsight. and
And
all of
that's what
this
happened with Odyssey.
post-release and
I
all this
felt this
content.
exact same way with Odyssey
Right.
until I played the marathon into Valhalla, and it was New Game Plus, and I was like, oh, this isn't bad. I like this.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So I'm excited for Mirage because it's different. I'm excited for Red because we're finally getting away from the Mediterranean. We're finally getting the Asian quote unquote area demographic. But I'm not interested in the fact that it's going to be a major RPG. I'm interested in Hexe because it is different and it's going to be something new. And I really like the team that's on it.
Yeah. Red's going to be
interesting to see based on what it is, the RPG from the team behind Odyssey, led by Jonathan Dumont, and how people feel about him still. It's going
I
to be
just
interesting
can't.
to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a big cause for concern for me. I mean,
You're
on the
not the only
outside, our
person.
information is limited, but this guy has not got a good reputation.
Have you listened to the Hookblade podcast from the showcase?
I have.
Yeah, that's a podcast to listen to if you're interested in their
Yeah,
thoughts.
good point and definite recommendation to anyone listening to this if you don't
Yep.
already. They're kind of dormant, I guess, as a show. They finished last year, but they came back to do a sort of AC 15 review.
They
It's a
lost
good
their passion
conversation.
because
Yeah.
of the allegations, and it's totally understandable. And if you
Mm.
listen to the last one and hear what they've been doing in the meantime, kudos to those guys. They're living their best lives.
Yeah. 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 Red is, I mean, it's concerning because of who's in charge. And it is concerning because of how will the game be structured in terms of length and content. And I don't know. I feel like I've been spoiled because, like I said, I know I've said this about 5 times tonight, but I literally finished it yesterday. I've been spoiled by Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, which do collectibles and context so well.
I'm also interested in the pay model out of Red. Is it going to be much of what we had with Valhalla? Is it going to be that $40 first year pass and then, oh, hey, here's another DLC that's not worth it for $40? And plus
well, haven't they said
of...
it could have multiple years of content?
Exactly.
And when I heard that, I
It
was
could
like, oh,
run.
no, I don't want
It could
that.
run 2 to 3 years. And I'm curious, like, if I buy, for instance, if I buy an Animus pack in Red, it's in the Infinity Hub. Can I use it in Hexe? Yeah, so there's just so much that we don't know based on how far away this game is.
Yeah.
Well, this hub, it's too early. And I'll be honest, I'm surprised I went as long as I did with so little on my last podcast. But really, the history is going to be interesting in Red. I want to see what they do.
Yeah, what time period do they pick? How do they set it up? I loved Odyssey's gameplay. I know a lot of people don't. That's totally fine. We don't all like the same things, but I loved the combat. I used stealth, such as it did exist in the game, a lot. I loved the ranged options. I loved the world. I loved playing as Cassandra. So there's a lot I loved about that game, and there's a lot that I'm interested to see what will have evolved in the 5 years or maybe 6 years between Odyssey's release and Red's release.
Yep. And there's and what I end up doing for some of my research when I can't replay a mission, I will go back and I will watch the Assassin's Creed series YouTube, all the playthrough of everything, just to get those little bitty context pieces. And if I get to the point to where I feel like a game isn't going to be something that I don't want to support, I will watch it there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I've become more cautious in the last year or so about how I spend my money and where I spend my money. And that's tough because voting with your wallet is absolutely valid as a consumer.
And that's really all we can do. I mean, of
Yeah,
course, they're going to continue the Valhalla model. It's made them how much money?
lots.
Yeah. I think it's the
Yeah.
first, between microtransactions and sales, it's their first game to make $1 billion.
Yep. Yep. And there's no reason to change direction.
No, but and bringing in things like Hexe to say, oh, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. Those smaller, shorter games, I'm all for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to make one final kind of serious point on the topic of what makes an Assassin's Creed game an Assassin's Creed game. We've been recording for a while, and it is getting rather late here in the UK. So during the show, I read out and then we sort of commented on the different commandments, such as they were documented back in 2010. If you're listening to this and you're interested in like a written analysis of those commandments and then a breakdown, maybe even we can call it a scoring system. One of the moderators on the Assassin's Creed subreddit, nstav13, respect to him. This goes back a number of years, but he wrote a breakdown of every game and kind of an analysis of their story and their gameplay and did they follow or not follow those commandments. And what we'll do again on the YouTube description, we'll put a link to this Reddit post. It's quite a long post, but it's a good read and probably is a good supporting read. Probably a more focused read than our discussion tonight.
Than our discussion, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good read of each game and which rules are bent, which rules are broken, and then there's also a follow-up one that he wrote for Valhalla as well, which again does bend a number of rules. But yeah, it's a good summary.
So I have a question before we call it a night. You did this spreadsheet and you put it out there. After this conversation and all of this extra information that you've gotten, have you changed any of your ratings?
Okay, that is a very good question. So none of the ratings were meant to be serious. There was a point I was trying to make, which I probably didn't make very well. But I think we've actually discussed it a little bit in this episode, which is you can name any quote unquote rule or any visual element or any gameplay element and say, I want my Assassin's Creed game to have that. And you can take that, and if you apply it, and depending on how you interpret the rule, you can almost rule in or out any game in this franchise as a quote unquote Assassin's Creed game. And that was kind of the point that I badly or definitely didn't make, which is maybe it's better to just relax a little bit. And if the game is fun and enjoyable and tells a good story, appreciate it for what it is, rather than getting really focused on specific rules and that all of these rules must be met. Yep. Or 80% of these rules must be met for this game to be a true Assassin's Creed game. I think I'm generally more flexible. Let me just pick one. The character should wear a hood. Well, what about if the game's got transmog, where you can choose to wear a hood or not? Transmog didn't exist in AC1. I can tell you for a fact that if I could play Unity with Arno's hood down, I would. Who wouldn't want to look at his beautiful face? Does that suddenly make it not an Assassin's Creed game because I've chosen to put the hood down? So I find some of these things a little arbitrary and sometimes a little laughable, if I'm being honest.
So to be an Assassin's Creed game, they used to say there were 4 core pillars of gameplay. Travel, parkour, stealth, combat, right? Or something like that.
That's documented in the GDC video, which again we'll link and definitely worth watching.
So that seems to have kind of been gone throughout each, because like Syndicate adding carriages, and Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla expanding into the horseware and everything just opening up with um, pirates, for goodness sake. You really have to broaden your mind, and to me, you don't necessarily need the creed. To an extent, you should have somebody there dealing with some sort of creed, be it the Assassin's Creed or their own creed.
Yeah.
um Travel in some form. You have to get across the map. There should be some kind of stealth, multiple ways for multiple people to play in different ways. Sure, I could run in with my big hammer and kill everybody, or you could come in and just smoke bomb here, poison dart there, and clear yourself out. There should be options. In the RPG game, sometimes it doesn't feel like we have those options. So I can understand where in that aspect people say, yeah, that's not necessarily Assassin's Creed. But to me, the biggest thing that says Assassin's Creed or not Assassin's Creed is the ideology of order versus chaos or tyranny versus freedom, and the lore. And somehow the history and the lore of the area. Maybe you're not sticking true to true history, like how one of, I think it was Baroncelli, was in Turkey, no, not Turkey, Istanbul, and then was captured and brought back. Instead, we find him in San Gimignano. Or the fact that Jacopo de Pazzi's head was used as a door knocker on his family's palazzo. We don't necessarily need all of that, but sticking somewhere into that is what makes an Assassin's Creed me, or Assassin's Creed for me. You're asking, you're sticking close to the history, and you are making people think about the world around you.
And on that bombshell,
we Brits need some sleep.
Oh, come on, it's still early.
It is 7 minutes past 1. I've got to sneak upstairs, past my kid's bedroom, into my bedroom without waking the house up.
Well, that's a perfect stealth mission, mate. So
Yeah,
wish you good luck.
I've been playing Assassin's Creed for 15 years just to entertain my kids with parkour and stealth.
Just don't be like, have you guys seen the American version of The Office?
No.
Yeah, no.
There is one scene where Michael Scott, played by Steve Carell, just rolls across furniture yelling parkour.
Oh, I've seen that clip. Yes.
Oh,
yeah, just don't do that.
Okay, confession time. My missus went out to the shops once. My kids are at school. I was home alone for an hour. I was just trying to reenact that because I was bored. So essentially, I was on the floor. I heard the washing machine beep saying, clothes are done. So I rolled across my sofa going, parkour. I jumped over my other sofa going, parkour. And I ran out, fell over my shoes, turned it into a roll, pretend it was all like parkour, just to get to the kitchen, which in my small house, I had no reason to roll, jump across couches. I could have just walked.
You need no reason other than it's fun.
I do that kind of things in front of my wife and 16-year-old, and they just look at me like, are you stupid? I go, no, I'm just living my best life.
Exactly.
My kids do it. It's called Don't Jump on the Sofa. Dad does it. I'm a big kid. Yay. Yep.
Yeah, it's like you turn 15 and you can't play The Floor is Lava anymore.
Oh, no, I still play The Floor is Lava. I've got kids. The kids are like, Floor is Lava. Like, yes, I know this. I have done this. Cushion there. T-shirt there, because it's a cheat. It's a T-shirt.
I think we're going to need some video evidence of this parkour moves, Declan.
I will get my camera working. I will show you my epic floors. No, that would involve my girlfriend recording. She'll shake her head at me.
So, like you mentioned this, and like you guys know, I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I play a Dragonborn bard. And I don't remember the story, but my daughter has a video of me with 2 lighters by my face, pretending I have like flame breath. or fire coming out of my nose. It's the dumbest thing
Nice.
ever out of context. But it's like we're just being us, having fun.
Yeah. Just because we're old grown-ups doesn't mean we can't have fun.
It's the physical stuff we can't do anymore because we hurt the next morning.
Yes, you need
Like,
a lot more
I learned-
ibuprofen as you get older.
I learned like 3 or 4 years ago to stop jumping on the trampoline with her. Yeah. No.
Joints don't heal so quick anymore. That's for sure.
It ends
Anyway,
up with
before
a
we all
trip
get
to
our
the
pipe and slippers,
chiropractor.
Declan, I think you need to close the show.
I was just reminiscing how I got my son's fire engine this morning, turned the lad around, put it on my hand and thought, oh, I made a hidden blade. I'm terrible. So, what were we discussing today? What makes an Assassin's Creed game an Assassin's Creed game? We went off topic, because I don't think we could nail down a definite answer to what makes Assassin's Creed game, because there is so much. Because, to be honest, Assassin's Creed is a unique game in the franchise. It's a historical fantasy with modern day sci-fi elements that question history. Trying to force that into one category that every game has to follow is impossible. It just has to follow some simple rules, but above all, have fun. That's the bottom line. Is Odyssey an Assassin's Creed game because you enjoy it? Yes. Is Assassin's Creed Valhalla an Assassin's Creed game even though you're punching a dragon because you're enjoying it? Why not? You know, we all play these games differently. I've been playing 15 years. I will hoover up anything, even if you give me a rabbit, put him in an Ezio hood and say it's Assassin's Creed Rabbids, I will lap that up and say it's canon, because I'm just an addict for AC at this point. I need help. So we would love to hear your thoughts on what you feel makes an Assassin's Creed game, and if you've got any more telling off for James in his chart that I may not have had a hand in telling him to post on social media.
It's all your fault, mate. All your fault.
He did privately post it, and I did suggest as the lovable co-host who's been here for 15 years to post it, so I don't take responsibility. So you can email me your opinions at assassinscreedletstalk@gmail.com or at Twitter at ACLetstalk or at James Tidliquid. Yeah, that's the right one. I keep tagging his virtual photography. Don't do that.
That's fine, mate. That's fine. And we should just say, where can people find Andrew and follow him?
The best place, yes, I am everywhere. The best place is probably Twitter, which is visions_AC. But
Nice.
if you're interested in listening to my podcast or finding my other social media, like my Instagram, you can find me at linktr.ee/visions of the past. You'll find everything there.
Nice.
Self-plugs in this show. What's this world's coming to? Well, I hope everyone's pops by, because I won't lie, it's coming up to 23rd of November in a month, and Visions will be coming back. That sounds so spooky. Visions. Andrew will be back for a YouTube live stream to celebrate the 3rd birthday of Let's Talk AC, because he doesn't talk about it, but if it wasn't for his brains, I would not be sitting here with a laptop and editing software. It was his brains. So
looking forward to that.
Thank you for all listening, and we'll see you all next week.
See you soon.
Malaka.
My God. Get out of here.
I just want to end an episode where I'm not laughing.
Right. Just hit that button, mate.
Calm.